Almost let the cat out of the bag there.
Yeah. Surprise.
All right.
You're on air.
And
Right on.
I'm gonna start recording on my end. Record on this computer. Almost let the cat. And you recording on your end, Purdeep?
Yeah, I am, man.
Okay, cool. This is the Male Entrepreneur Podcast, episode number 144, and we are live in 3, 2. All right, welcome back to the Male Entrepreneur, the podcast for men who win, with your host Purdeep Sangha. Purdeep, how you doing today, man?
Man, I'm doing pretty awesome. So by the time this episode comes out, it'll be almost a week since we released the book. So I'm super excited. It's gung ho, running 24/7, trying to get the book into as many hands as possible. But I'm super excited.
And the book is The Complete Male, and it's phenomenal. And we will talk about that, I'm assuming, in the next episode. But we've got something special lined up for the listeners today.
Yeah, I'm super excited because we've got a buddy of mine coming on the show. He's also the co-host, or the guy that put together the Coaches Council podcast, which is the other podcast that I'm on, and he's the brains behind that. Just an awesome guy in general, also a fellow Canadian, but a super, expert in his space because obviously here we're helping guys out. He's been helping guys out for a very long time in a different space when it comes to energy management and body, physique, health, fitness, all that cool stuff that guys want to have and aspire to have. So Justin, thanks for joining us, man.
Pradeep, it's a pleasure. And Nathan, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Yeah, so I don't want to butcher your last name because every time I try to say it, I confuse myself.
It's Roethlingshoefer.
Yeah,
so it's 16 letters. I always joke around that I was the smartest kid in kindergarten because I could smell my last name, and thus that means I knew the alphabet. And then it just went downhill from there.
Yeah, it's funny. I could actually spell it without having to look it up now, but I still can't say it. But what background is that?
German.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah.
That's cool, man. So why don't you just, I know a lot about you, but why don't you share with the guys out there listening in terms of, where you came from, what you do now?
Yeah, absolutely. So ever since the age of about probably 14, I had an absolute obsession with human performance and what that meant and human optimization. And as a kid growing up in Canada, I wanted to play in the National Hockey League. That was my passion. That was my goal. That was what I was set on doing. And very quickly, I found out that I had a talent, but I wasn't the most talented kid. I wasn't going to get there on sheer gifts, and I needed to get there in another way. And so I looked into sleep, recovery, training, ways to make me faster, stronger. And over the course of my career, that's what propelled me through to college, into pro hockey, and ultimately became a passion. Now, dialing it back to probably the age of 17, I became that guy that would attach electrodes to his forehead and his temples and his occipital lobes, have a pulse oximeter, a heart rate monitor, and that's how I would sleep. I always said I never slept with girls in college because nobody wants to have a guy with all these wires coming out of him going to bed every night. And so it was, but ultimately it was what allowed me to know, how was I sleeping? Was I recovering well enough? Was I going through the proper sleep cycles to optimize my body so that I could do what I needed to day in and day out consistently and perform at the best rate, better than anybody else, even people who were more talented than I, so that I would have that competitive edge and that leg up. And so as I got out of playing, I took that same approach to my coaching, and we got into the performance space. Started at the University of Louisville as a graduate assistant, got my master's degree in performance science and psychology, and implementing a couple of the aspects I was just talking about, focusing on recovery and sleep with the men's and women's basketball teams down there. We ended up winning a national championship and going to the league or the championship on the women's side and losing to UConn. Right after that, I had the opportunity to run the program at Miami University for men's hockey program. Made it very data focused, data driven. Before, data was the cool thing. And there was a learning curve, but we saw results. We put 15 guys to the National Hockey League in a span of 3 years. And from there, had the opportunity to work and consult with the Columbus Blue Jackets and then the Washington Capitals. And then I got the opportunity to run a program in Anaheim, and became very quickly known in the space as the data guy, the guy that used data to personalize change and everything from a performance side. And in 2018, I got a phone call from a small company out in California and said, hey, because I'd written a couple books, and they said, hey, can you come and do something with our executive team to help us from a performance side? And I hung up the phone. I was like, absolutely. And I got off and I looked at my better half and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with them. I have no idea. Like, I only work with hockey players. And very quickly when I got into the space, they said, we want to sleep better. We want to have more energy. We want to be able to be more efficient. We want to be able to live longer, have more vitality in how we operate, and ultimately be better versions of who we are. And I was like, man, that's what I do for hockey guys. And I very quickly put the A and B together to make C. And so as of today, I've basically disrupted the health and wellness space in corporate and executive space within the health and wellness, utilizing data to personalize it, focusing on recovery, focusing on sleep, and focusing on the physical elements that what I call the big rocks that are personalized to you, that will give the maximal change for the minimal dose. And by giving you time back in a lot of the things that we spend time in that aren't actually creating change. And so the utilization of data, the ability to personalize it, and the understanding that it becomes driving your body based off of numbers is just like the concept of driving your business off of numbers. And so the concept becomes very like, that's a snap if you're listening on the podcast. It becomes very immediate for people to draw the parallels to data for body, just as data for business.
Well, I think information is important. It's one of the things that, you got to measure, you got to drive. We take that into account for the business stuff when you come up with your annual goals and you say, okay, let's measure to our performance, the financial aspect, all that kind of stuff. But when we take a look at our own performance, we don't tend to measure it as much, which is really interesting. I kind of see the importance there. We've actually just started to, and for those of you out there listening, Justin is going to be helping me out with some of the stuff that he's doing for other people. We're gonna test out some of the stuff and see how it goes. I have complete faith in what he does. And here's why. So I'm a big health and fitness guy myself, but I'm not the expert. I'm not the guy out there that's looking at data all the time. Yes, I wear, a heart monitor and I wear my Muse to sleep and check out my brain patterns and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not the guy that looks at this data all the time. This is stuff that actually works, right? Justin is a guy that can definitely help you if you're looking at boosting up your performance. What kind of results have you seen with guys, Justin, with some of the guys that you're out there working with?
Yeah, so I always love this example where we had an individual. He was running a Fortune 100 company, and he was obviously the stressors that come day to day with running a company of that magnitude, was having a hard time figuring out why he was always exhausted. He was getting 9 hours of sleep. He was juicing in the morning. He had a full vitamin profile. He had a personal trainer, was doing the things that he was supposed to do, what all the gurus say is necessary. But all of a sudden, he woke up exhausted every day. He wasn't feeling the way that he knew he needed to feel. And when we took a look back and we got his DNA analysis back, we all of a sudden found out that he was predisposed to a low level of vitamin D. He was predisposed to a low level of vitamin B. He was a non-responder to BCAAs, and in actuality had a high effect of stress on sleep deprivation. And so just by understanding those four things, we were able to revolutionize and completely change his supplement profile, thus utilizing things that actually made change for him. So the $250 a month he was spending on supplements, we dropped it down to $17 a month because he was taking a lot of things that his body wasn't utilizing. Then we went and took a look at how he was actually sleeping. He was trying to get 10 hours in every single night, 10 hours of sleep every single night, but waking up exhausted. Where's the parallels here? And we started to realize that quantity for him was not the same as quality, because everybody has 4 sleep cycles. You have light sleep, you have slow wave sleep, which is where the physical restoration comes from. You have REM sleep, which is where the mental restoration comes from. And then you have wake time. And we started to realize really quickly that for him, he was spending about 70% of his night's sleep in that light sleep area. And because of that, all of a sudden, we knew that he wasn't actually getting into the deeper cycles of restorative sleep. So mentally, he wasn't as sharp. Physically, he was exhausted and not recovering from the training sessions he was doing. So he was not optimizing all the proper, quote unquote, work that he was doing. Mm-hmm. And so the moment that we started to nail down his night routine, and the night routine and sleep consistency became such an important piece, and the data showed us that his sleep consistency, meaning going to bed and waking up within about 30 minutes of one another, were at about 60 to 70%, which affects your body clock, which affects your circadian rhythm, which by science we know is the number one indicator of longevity, the number one indicator of chronic illness prevention, and the number one indicator of performance. And so what we did for him was we actually took it back. We said, I just want us to focus on getting 7 hours of quality sleep. And so when we focused on the night routine leading up to sleep, I have a 3-2-1 rule, which I'll go over in a second. But we focused on the time leading up to going to sleep. The moment we focused on that, and the moment that of what wake up time he wanted, we took his hours of sleep from 10 to 7, and the light sleep went from almost 65, 70% down to 45%. Well, all of a sudden, the deep sleep, the REM sleep, the slow wave sleep went again from about 20% combined to about 45% combined. That means the quality of sleep in 7 hours all of a sudden skyrocketed his energy level, the recovery space we got, and it ended up being an hour more of deep sleep, REM sleep, slow wave sleep, every single night. So now extrapolate that over. It's 7 hours more a week. It's 28 hours more a month. And over the course of a year, it's close to 250, 300 hours a year. Think about that conceptually for a second. Chronically, if you're getting 300 hours of more quality sleep every single year, do you think you're going to have more energy? You think you're going to be able to function at a higher level? You think you're going to be in a better mood? You think you're going to lose weight? You think you're going to do all these things while also getting 3 hours back in your day, 21 hours back a week? He goes, I'm in. Tell me how I need to do that. And that's what we did. And all of a sudden, he was a new person. He was more present at home. He was able to be more present at work when it was work time. He now found he had more hours in the day than he actually needed. And he wasn't as rushed. He wasn't as stressed. He was able to optimize himself and show up with a better level of energy and accomplish the goals he was looking for from a physique and mental capability.
I have a question for you. I have heard, especially talking about circadian rhythms, I've heard that children and young adults and older men have different sleep needs or requirements, different rhythms. And I wondered, I'm not an expert on this, so I wanted to get your take on it. But then I also wondered if that's true, the impacts on children and requiring them to wake up at the same time as their parents do to go to school so that they're on the same schedule that the parents are on. And is it true that that these rhythms change for us throughout our life? And is there a way, if so, is there a way to work being a parent and being able to maximize this information for both you and your children?
It's a great question. So no matter if you're 5 years old, no matter if you're 50 years old, every single one of us goes through a 90-minute sleep cycle. So to go through that cycle I talked about, from light to slow wave sleep to REM sleep, back to wake time, all the way through that takes 90 minutes. Whether you're 5, whether you're 50, never changes. What does change, however, is the required cycles per week that you need. And so for typical adults, call it 20, 21 plus, 35 sleep cycles per week is more than adequate. So on average, that would mean if we divide it by 7, you need about 5 full sleep cycles a night, which conjugates down into about 7.5 hours, give or take, every single night. Now, from the child standpoint, we're looking at anywhere from 40 to 45 sleep cycles. And that's under the age of 10 and below. A lot of this is going to become individualized. So it's not necessarily about getting the certain hours of sleep. It's about building the structure so that you're actually being able to go through the 90-minute sleep cycles. So if you're waking your son or daughter up at 5 years old, 6 years old, 8 years old, in the middle of a deep sleep REM cycle, they're going to be groggy, they're going to be foggy, they're going to feel mentally tired because you woke them up in the middle of a deep sleep. So this is where getting in a good, solid nighttime routine and waking up routine is so imperative for every single one of us as human beings, whether you're, again, 5 or whether you're 50. So you can use the same concept. If you're going to be going to bed at, call it 8 p.m. as a 8-year-old child, you're putting your kids to bed at 8 o'clock. Well,
it actually ends up being like 10 by the time they brush their teeth, run around, you yell at them 20 times.
Exactly. And that's the issue a lot of parents run into is you have the best intentions of going to bed. However, we have not prepared them for that. And I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but to your point, Purdeep, if we don't prepare for sleep, if we don't actually put preparation in, how do we expect to do something that is the number one most important thing that's going to allow us to feel rested and nurtured? Sleep is the number one thing.
And if I could share a personal story there is, I think we underestimate the power of sleep because I've always been like a napper. I can I don't know what it is, that disorder that they call it. You can pass out anywhere. I can pretty much do that anywhere, in a car, in a truck, like just I'm out. My wife, on the other hand, she has trouble sleeping, and we've had some, you can say, some challenges over the years because I was like, "What's going on? Like, you're just, you're not getting engaged in the relationship. You're not, with the kids." She was always preoccupied, and when we really went down to it, that's really when we started to take a look at the health side.
Mm-hmm.
Is she wasn't getting enough sleep or quality sleep, and that's when she really did a deep dive into the health. And diet and sleep and all that kind of stuff. And it was a night and day difference in terms of her. So if you, even from a relationship standpoint, if you're taking a look and saying, okay, why is my partner not engaged? What's happening? Why are they making some odd decisions? This is something to take a look at. It is serious. If you're not getting enough sleep, it will impact you and how you operate as a human being.
It's the number one indicator of immunity. It's the number one indicator of longevity, the number one indicator of mental illness, the number one indicator of Alzheimer's. You put sleep at the base of everything. If you can't look after sleep and if you can't prepare for it, you're not setting yourself up for high quality sleep. What are we doing? We prepare ourselves for meetings. You don't walk into a big presentation and just wing it. No, you've probably practiced your presentation. You've probably gone over your notes. You've probably looked at the key points that you want to hit on. And you walk in feeling prepared and you nail it. Well, for sleep, conversely, we watch TV, we start reading, we're on our phone, and then we expect us to lay down in bed and fall asleep. Well, no, we have to prepare ourselves. We have to allow the parasympathetic nervous system to activate so that we bring all of the sensations and the hormones in our body down to a certain level in which we can fall asleep on. One last thing I want to touch on is our hormones that are released, our sleep hormones. Our body is going to release those at a certain point in time. And that is why going to bed at the same time every night is so important. Because if our bedtime is 9 o'clock, our body is going to know that this is how our body clock gets set, that at 8:15, it's going to start to release hormones. So by 9 o'clock, we're ready to go to sleep. We're ready to fall asleep and our head hits the pillow and we're out. Well, if we go to bed at 9 and then 11 and then 2 and then 4, and then 8 again, our body never knows when to release these hormones. And in fact, if try this for a while, you start to go to sleep at 9 p.m. every night and you fall asleep really well, and then you push it to 10 one night, your body wakes up and it goes, we're not sleeping. It's 9 p.m. What's going on? The first thing that goes on is our mind, our brain is meant to keep us alive. It was built 2 billion years ago. And so it hasn't evolved with us. And so what it knows is that there's danger. It has to keep us alive. What does that mean? So what it's going to do is it's going to send us through light sleep rhythms all night. And we actually will not get into those deep REM cycle sleeps, because if we fall asleep, all our body knows is there's danger around us and we may not be awake to get through it. So it goes through light sleep and wake sleep all night. Hence why we're not going to get as deep a sleep, as restful as a sleep, as recovering of a sleep if we do not set those parameters up.
Wow, it's funny because everybody always talks about diet and exercise, and those are the two things that everybody focuses on. And when Purdeep told me we were going to have you on the show, I was like, okay, another diet and exercise show. And we spent the whole time talking about sleep, which is almost completely ignored in the conversation.
You're exactly right. And that's quite often where what we do and how we affect companies, culture, and individuals is really being disrupted, because we focus so much on sleep, so much on routine. And then we also tabulate into nutrition, supplementation, physical exercise, but it all starts with that baseline. And when data and key metrics drive everything, we're no longer playing the guru's game. We're no longer playing the Instagram fame game, the fad of the day. We're playing your game. And Nathan, your game is different than Purdeep's game, is different than my game. And we can optimize each one of our games by doing it this way. And the last thing I want to touch on is, it was something that was said to me by a client the other day, a potential client, was they go, well, Justin, this is all great, but I don't have time for any of this. I said, okay, do you sleep? They said, yes. I said, do you eat food? He said, yes. Do you work? They said, yes. Do you take supplements? Yes. Do you engage in stressful situations throughout the day? Yes. I said, okay, so you're doing everything we're going to address anyways. I'm not adding anything. But what if we were to do it in a more optimized way? Everything you were doing anyways, whether you work with me or not, you're going to be participating in all of these activities. Why would we not want to do it in the best way that you know how? And they were like, yeah, okay, I get it.
So if someone wants to find out more about you or maybe get involved in your world, what's the best place or the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so then just go into the website, justownit.co, JUST ownit.co. And there's a bunch of different ways in which you can get involved. There's a free ebook on there that you can get into. There's you can book a call that kind of just goes into more in-depth time to get us more information on yourself. And then obviously just very active through social medias on Instagram and LinkedIn are pretty much my two platforms I'm most active on. And Purdeep can put those in the show notes, but definitely the best places to reach us.
Perfect. So thanks, man. Totally appreciate you coming on the show and sharing that awesome knowledge and wisdom for the high performing guys, or the guys who want to be super high performing out there. So thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, Purdeep. Always a pleasure chatting, and thank you for having me on.
And Purdeep, for the first time listeners, where can they go if they want to subscribe and get more episodes of the Male Entrepreneur Podcast?
Yeah, check us out at youtubeformen.com or malepodcast.com.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Until next time, we will catch you later.
Till next time.